Welcome to our podcast, proudly brought to you by VPA Australia, our trusted supplement provider since Unity Gym started. As sponsored athletes, we're excited to offer you a special 10% discount on top quality supplements that ship worldwide. Just use our discount code from the description. To avoid international shipping fees, contact VPA and tell them we sent you to get a flat shipping rate. Today's episode is also sponsored by the Flexibility Blueprint. Ever felt lost in the sea of social media fitness advice? The Flexibility Blueprint is your map to progress, designed to help you get laser focused on what matters most for your journey in flexibility and strength. And guess what? It's free. Grab it using the link in the description. If you're starting your flexibility journey, don't miss our 20-minute mobility routine. It's your first step to quick wins in flexibility. For those further along, use our Flexibility Masterclass, featuring advanced techniques like loaded stretching and end range strength for the pancake, front splits, middle splits, and more. Links for both are also in the description. And for the seasoned athletes, avoid the frustration of complex training puzzles with our UMS Tribe membership. It's a different online coaching experience with strength and flexibility combined. Don't forget, we're Amazon affiliates too. You can find all the equipment used in our videos and podcasts at the most competitive prices with our affiliate links in the description. Now let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to today's podcast episode where we're talking all things frozen shoulder. I've got Phil White here, our resident physiotherapist. I've personally rehabilitated frozen shoulder in one of our members, but now we have a new member in our UMS Tribe membership who has frozen shoulder as well. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity to talk to Phil, our resident physio, about frozen shoulder. So Phil, how are you, mate?
Very well. Yeah. It's a super interesting topic, the frozen shoulder. So keen to get into it because it's like, it is not a, it doesn't kind of work like a lot of regular injuries. So I think a really important one to get that kind of education across so people understand what's going on.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, with my experience with it, it's very different to anything that I've ever dealt with before. So do you want to talk us through, just, I guess, to get started, what frozen shoulder is, Phil?
Yeah, for sure. Frozen shoulder is probably the most common way that people would know about it, but otherwise adhesive capsulitis is the term that's often used, particularly in America. So just to know that like those, it's the same thing there. However, the like adhesive capsulitis has kind of gone out of favor as a name because it is suggesting, you know, that it's all about like the adhesions in the capsule, and really it's been shown to be a bit more of a contractor issue. And so that might be kind of seem a bit pedantic and nitpicky, but I think it is important to like the words do mean things, and often that informs how people treat it. So there's a bit of an old school movement to really like get in there and try and break up adhesions, as they say, with hardcore manual therapy, but that's been shown to be like not at all useful and in fact often detrimental. So we're going with frozen shoulder. It's basically a condition that leads to like seriously painful at first, and then a seriously limited range of motion shoulder that really is just so debilitating for people who have it. So it's typically in people between 50 and 70. So if you're, or even 50 and sort of 65. So if you're younger than that or older than that, it's probably unlikely that that's the case, but it's definitely a injury of like a condition where you have to kind of exclude all of the other factors to figure out that it is frozen shoulder. There's not kind of clear diagnostic criteria, except that you really have a very limited, very painful shoulder, and on an x-ray you don't have any other signs of injury and trauma.
So my understanding of frozen shoulder is that it's basically that the nervous system has detected danger, let's say, and has locked down the shoulder by creating real tension in the muscles that restricts range of motion and that presents as like pain and inflammation when you try and move it beyond a certain range. Is that accurate or is that inaccurate?
Yeah, not particularly accurate. No, and the like, and it, no, not necessarily like a reflection on your knowledge. It's just it's a really like unknown, like the etiology, so the cause of the injury and this condition is really something that is quite unknown. However, the mechanism of the locking down the movement isn't just generally a muscular thing. It's actually the capsule itself. So the capsule is kind of like it's a passive structure, so it's not something that you can contract. It's kind of like a balloon that goes around the shoulder joint, keeps the synovial fluid, which is the fluid in the joint, in place, and it is actually a contractor of that structure that really locks down the movement there. Now your muscles, so your external rotators, your posterior cuff, does blend in with that capsule, so there is an element of when you try and use the musculature that's also affected, but yeah, it really is that sort of capsular constriction and contracture. So.
Yep. And when so Bill had frozen shoulder back at the gym. I'm not sure if you remember,
Yeah, I do.
and we did a
Yeah,
bunch.
twice, right? Like one side and the other.
Yeah, yeah, he had it. Yeah, that's right. It was crazy. And the second side we were able to deal with a lot quicker because I knew
Yeah.
a lot more about what was going on. And so I'd never dealt with frozen shoulder before, and we did a bunch of research. That's when we had Matt working with us at the gym, who was finishing his exercise sports science degree, and he did some research. Then we chatted about it, and we wrote Bill a progressive program. And basically, what we were doing was very reduced range of motion in the earlier phases, and basically just trying to do strength training any way that we could, in a way that kept the humerus quite close to the body to start with. And I remember the only thing where when we in the first couple of phases where we brought the humerus away from the center line of the body was that exercise where you bend over and you lean on the bench and you retract your scapula and then just do those really small circles with the arms.
Pendular
Yeah,
motion.
yeah, and it was really challenging for him in the earlier phases, and then that pain-free range would slightly increase, and then we'd basically just increase the range of motion with the exercises that we were doing. And it was a slow process. It probably took about 8 to 9 months to get him back to full function, but it did happen, and it was something that we were able to get through.
If it was 8 to 9 months, that's actually really quite quick for a frozen shoulder. So
Really?
that's a really important thing to understand about the frozen shoulder is it's it's a long thing. Like it's generally between 1 and 4 years before people are really back to normal function, and then there's probably about 10% of people who actually take longer than that and can have ongoing issues from there. Typically, like a bit of pain that's kind of residual and a bit of reduced range of motion, but generally not functional deficits. But after 4 years, not 90% of people are generally back. But that's a long time. Like
Yep.
4 years, a year is a long time. So it's
Yeah, it is. It is. And is it something, Phil, in your experience, that will it go away with time if you just rest, or do you need to do exercise?
Yeah, so it's interesting looking at the research around this, where they've done trials comparing basically like physiotherapy intervention, where you're getting like education and sort of pain management. I think before we even get into that, it's important to understand the sort of phases of a frozen shoulder, because that will also inform the sort of treatment options. So the kind of classic way of talking about it is the idea you have like the freezing stage, the frozen stage, and the thawing stage. So that freezing stage is the typically like extremely painful. It's one of the most painful shoulder conditions that you can have, and it's really like you suddenly have like a really sudden onset of reduced range of motion, so you kind of can't lift your arm, and particularly external rotation becomes incredibly painful, and there's a lot of pain overnight as well, because lying on it is something that is really painful, and that phase can take months. And it's so important to understand, like in that phase, that there's this tendency, as we want to take action and do something about it, but in that early phase it's actually counterproductive to be trying to like increase that range of motion, to be doing interventions like physical interventions to move the shoulder around, because in that early stage is basically when you start to get this that it's a real inflammatory process, that first phase, and that's when, if you really aggravate it too much, it can actually lead to increased stiffness down the line and actually a slower course of healing. So it's really hard as a as a health practitioner, both when you're a trainer and a physio, to know when not to touch them, because obviously you want to be providing value and trying to like actively help people, but it's interesting looking at the worse outcomes when you do too much. Yes, it's a particularly tricky one, because it is hard to not do anything in that early stage. Like it's hard not to try and get them moving, get them instant sort of results. But the real thing with that initial phase, which can be months of that freezing stage, is that it's going to be very painful, and we've got to try and basically reduce that inflammatory process in that stage if we can, and not do anything too much to aggravate it. So it's hard as a health practitioner, both a personal trainer and a physio, to not do anything. And it's interesting, I kind of referenced those studies before, where it looks at the difference between physio intervention, or basically non-surgical management, surgical management, and what they called benign neglect, often called skillful neglect, which I love as a term, which is basically like knowing when to just do nothing, and basically being there as a support person to help guide them with education, but to not actually intervene too much. So and the studies there showed that basically 90% of people with non-surgical management got better in that, like in the follow-up, 91% of the surgical people and 94 of the benign neglect people actually got better. So, not really significant changes between the three of them, but like, even showed a bit of a nudge towards that, benign neglect actually being the best thing, which is basically letting it run its course without pissing it off. Because I think it's that tendency to want to do more, and it's that aggravation in the early stages can often be, from helpful people can often be something that is counterproductive. And yeah, there's even further studies looking at that, like physiotherapy, like adding stretching and mobilization versus not, and letting it go. And there was significantly faster resolution of symptoms from people who like had the skillful neglect. So yeah, it's a really counter to what a lot of people will expect from seeking treatment, and also hard for health practitioners not to just jump in and do whatever you can.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I hadn't heard of the three stages of frozen shoulder before, and I'm already thinking of how our member in our online coaching tribe is really going to benefit from this episode, because recently they went from phase 1 in a shoulder rehab program to phase 2, and where I'm helping with a slap tear, but they're also dealing with some frozen shoulder as well. And when they went to phase 2, the main change is an increase in range of motion in the movements, and they experienced some significant increase in pain. And they asked me what to do, and I said, if any of the movements cause you pain, go back to doing the movements that don't cause you pain. Don't progress in anything just because a program says you should if it causes pain like that. So that's interesting to hear that. It's definitely
And
broadened
that
my
second study I
knowledge on
talked
it.
about was like it had a look at with the physios kind of pushing up to pain and beyond those barriers, and that was shown to basically have like a delayed recovery compared to people who basically did nothing. So yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. Well, that's great, Phil. That's really interesting info, and I think anybody with frozen shoulder would benefit from that. So what would be your suggested course of action for
Yeah, so
somebody
I think
with frozen
it's like,
shoulder in those three
first is
stages?
to make sure it definitely is frozen shoulder, because there is, a lot of, like, as I said, it's kind of a diagnosis of exclusion. So you want to make sure that really you are dealing with frozen shoulder and not something else, because anything that presents like frozen shoulder that isn't frozen shoulder is probably something pretty serious. So, the things to look out for is you almost certainly do want to get an x-ray if you have frozen shoulder, because you want to check that you don't have any like fractures in there. So especially if you have a traumatic injury background, like if you had any injuries in the past, then things like avascular necrosis, which is when you get like a lack of blood flow to the bone and the bone can start to die. If you are, especially if you're younger than 40, like getting an x-ray and making sure that it's not cancer, because the shoulder and the head of the humerus is like the third most likely place to get a metastatic or bone tumor or metastatic cancer. So really important to make sure that you know that it's definitely frozen shoulder and not something else. So, and because frozen shoulder typically does have that night pain, so it's painful overnight, like that is something that's also shared between basically kind of your red flag, refer to doctors for immediate sort of investigation. So that's generally your cancers and neurological sort of things. And it can also generally be if you're getting it on both sides at once, then you definitely want to get that checked out as well, because it's really common, as would happen with Bill, where like in 20% of people they get a follow-up on the other shoulder. Like 20% of people will get the other side as well, which is just so cruel, because 1 to 4 years and then you go on again. That's tough times. But yeah, if you're getting it at the same time, then it's there's other things to look into, potentially Parkinson's. There's been a link there as well. So yeah, first thing is you want to make sure you really know it is frozen shoulder, and the second thing is like just in cause of like in terms of what caused it, there is a real strong link with diabetes and independent of diabetes, like hyperglycemia, so high sugar levels in your blood, and high CRP, which is like a C-reactive protein. It's a sign of inflammation. So it's really important to sort of see that there is, like, although we say we don't know exactly what caused it, there definitely is that link to metabolic health. And you want to make sure that, like, if this is something that's happening, then you want to be looking at, dietary intervention and like stress management, because those kind of things are really quite linked. So that would be just like the general big picture ways of approaching it. But when it comes to what to do in the moment, like, you do want to be working with a professional on this. Like, do work with someone knowledgeable, ideally someone who's has worked with people before, because there are options around, both in like the benign neglect, but there's also like there are corticosteroid injections that can be really helpful in the first sort of 6 weeks. That comes with its own risks, but you want to kind of look into that, and that has shown to be potentially beneficial. And then there are surgical interventions that generally, I certainly would not be the first line, and it's something that surgeons certainly shouldn't do in the first 9 months, but that can be a thing for long-term people who have issues. When it comes to the exercise and what you can do actively, I think there's kind of 2 ways of thinking about it. There's the things that actively help the shoulder itself. So once you pass that painful stage, in that sort of that frozen and thawing stage, then starting to push into the range of motion, doing stretching and eccentric end of range motion when it's not painful, generally does show to be beneficial. So that can be a way of increasing your range of motion again. But then I think almost the bigger thing, and I think why it's so beneficial that Bill was working with you, and why I think getting that balance between skillful neglect and continue to work with the patient, is that you want to be making sure you're staying active, staying healthy, staying engaged in your training, and focusing on other things. And I have this mantra whenever I'm injured, which I hurt my ankle, just rolled my ankle walking down the street the other day. Absolutely nothing caused it, but the first thing that comes to my mind is every injury is an opportunity, and you just got to find something else to stay see those constraints of the injury means, okay, I can't work with my shoulder so much here, but hey, this is going to be this constraint means that I'll have a heap of focus, a heap of energy to then get stuck into something like your lower body training, your lower body mobility, maybe running, maybe cycling. You just got to try and find some way of staying engaged, because that 1 to 4 years out, particularly at that age where muscle mass starts to decline so much, fitness, everything declines so much faster from 50 onwards. You really need to make it work with a professional, or follow a program that means that you can be making progress in other areas, so you stay mentally positive. Because as you can imagine, 1 to 4 years of a shoulder that's really not functioning very well and can be extremely painful, seriously psychologically challenging. So yeah, it's so important to stay engaged and try and find ways of working around it.
That's great advice, Phil. And I think anybody with frozen shoulder listening to this, hopefully you've learned something from this. I certainly have. And I haven't worked with anybody with frozen shoulder for a decade now. So I needed a little bit of a brush up myself. And I hadn't heard those 3 stages. And of course, everything that we learn, there's always new research. So it's always really good to, even if you're a fitness...
The other thing to remember with research as well is research is so tough, because it's looking at the general responses to things, and it will have, it'll say an exercise intervention, but I'm sure that the exercise intervention that you did might be quite different to the one that's studied. So it's kind of hard to make that right. Specific kind of advice from exercise is bad versus okay, this specific protocol within these boundaries and this context.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is important to remember that there is always going to be that nuance, but the general approach of, in the painful phase, don't piss it off, and in the stiff phase that's not painful, start to progress, and then throughout both of those phases, making sure you're staying engaged, staying healthy, staying active, staying motivated. And with that link, I think particularly between that metabolic health and stress, I think that is such a good sign that you really want to be looking at your metabolic health, your sugar levels during that time, and there's no better way than staying engaged in exercise.
Yep, absolutely. Hope you learned something from this, everybody. If you haven't done so yet, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're listening to our podcast, please leave us a review. And if you've got any questions, if you have anything that you'd like to hear us discuss on our podcast, please leave it in a comment and we'll get to it. And Phil, thanks so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
Have a wonderful day, everyone.